Here we go, starting the recording. Okay.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Thanks everyone for coming. This is the October 2022 meeting of the WordPress Naperville Meetup, and we are talking about the PHP update deadline, which is happening on November 28th, 2022. So in just a few weeks. And this is kind of a big deal depending on your role. My name is Claire, for those of you who don't know me. I'm a backend developer in WordPress, and I maintain somewhere between 15 and 20 WordPress sites on various hosts of varying complexity. And this is something that I'm starting to deal with my clients on a day-by-day basis now as we're trying to get ready for this November 28th deadline. So what's happening is that on November 28th, PHP 7.4, which is at this point kind of a mid to old version of PHP, is going to reach its end of life. The developers who maintain PHP are going to stop applying security updates to PHP 7.4. Here we have a map sort of where we are. We are this red dotted line, and this end of this orange bar here is the end of life for PHP 7.4. There's PHP 8 and 8.1 and even 8.2 are available on some hosts, but most websites, most WordPress websites right now are chugging along on PHP 7.4 or earlier. This looming insecurity is a pretty big deal. About 77% of the websites on the internet use PHP. It's used in Magento, Drupal, Joomla, Craft CMS, all sorts of things. And as we know, WordPress itself has an enormous footprint on the internet. And the vast majority of WordPress websites are not running PHP 8. They're running PHP 7.4 or earlier, in some cases even all the way back to PHP 5. There's some statistics that I've linked to in these slides, which I will post later. And we can see PHP versions. This is 8.0. This is 8.1. 8.2 doesn't even show up on here. So basically 10% of WordPress websites are ready for this upgrade right now. What is likely going to happen? What is definitely going to happen is that as PHP 7.4 becomes deprecated and no longer receives security updates, hackers are going to target it. And they might even specifically target WordPress itself through PHP, as WordPress having such a wide footprint on the internet it's a lot of bang for your buck if you're a hacker. There's all sorts of WordPress sites, which, as we know, people leave unmaintained or just install and let sit there. They're not keeping track of it. They're not being careful with it. There's a lot of vulnerable WordPress sites out there, so that makes them good targets for hackers. Many responsible hosting providers are going to be upgrading their sites to PHP 8 in the next few weeks, just so they can be sure that there's no insecure versions of PHP on their servers. They want to make sure their servers are all locked down with supported versions of PHP once that November 28 deadline hits. Some hosts have already started mandatory upgrades. I have one client who did a mandatory upgrade of all websites on their servers in August. And then they had to roll it back a week later because so many people's sites broke that they got so many complaints, they had to roll it back, give everybody another 2 weeks to get their sites up to date, and then roll it out again. I only know of one host who's going to allow you to not upgrade to PHP 8, and that's WP Engine. WP Engine, being a really large enterprise level WordPress host, is dedicating their own developers and their own resources to keeping PHP 7.4 stable on their own servers. So if you're on WP Engine for your host, you've bought yourself some time. They don't have a deadline for when they're going to force the upgrade, but they're letting everyone stay with 7.4 for now. But everyone else, it's mandatory, or you should consider it mandatory. So the plan is, the best idea is for everybody to upgrade to PHP 8. There is also PHP 8.1, but the word on the street that I've heard from Drupal developers, some Drupal developers I know, is that the upgrade from PHP 8 to PHP 8.1 is even riskier than the upgrade from PHP 7.4 to PHP 8. So for now, because we're on this tight deadline, it kind of makes more sense to just shoot for PHP 8.0 and try to get your site updated to those specifications. This isn't just a horrible thing. There's PHP 8 is going to be great for, it's going to be faster, better performance for your website, better security for the website. And WordPress itself is already compatible with PHP 8. It has been for going on 2 years now, since December 2020, since 5.6. The problem is that WordPress, the ecosystem being the way it is, every WordPress site is a special snowflake with its own combination of plugins and themes. And not all of those are compatible with PHP 8 right now. So you might have everything shipshape on your site and then one theme that's going to break, or your site might be in perfect condition. Theoretically, if you are running the latest version of WordPress, a good updated theme, and updated reputable plugins, your site should be fine. But because I'm a backend developer, my job is to be paranoid when I maintain sites. So we're doing this presentation on how to deal with different possibilities and how to make sure you are ready. The worst case scenario is that you do nothing to prepare for the update. Your hosting provider forces your site to update to PHP 8. Hopefully they'll give you some warning. They may not. That would be kind of a jerk move, but they upgrade you to PHP 8 and your site breaks. And now you're sitting there with a broken live site and you have to figure out what's wrong with your live site, maybe replace some functionality, maybe get a new theme, maybe get someone to help you figure out what's going on. And if you've waited until, the deadline, you're going to be trying to do this at the same week. The other 33% of the people in the world who are running websites on WordPress websites on PHP 7.4 are also trying to do this. Best case scenario, which hopefully is going to be the most common, is that you do nothing except regular maintenance on your website, regular security updates. Your hosting provider updates you to PHP 8 and your site is just fine. This can totally happen. Of the sites, I actually spent all day trying to get sites to break by updating them to PHP 8, and I got through 6 sites and none of them broke. So if you, like I said, if you have a good modern theme, you're running updated plugins, your site might be totally fine. But Stacy, on the other hand, spent all day dealing with a horrible nightmare bug on her site. And we don't want that to be you. We want to try to mitigate that. Or if that is something that's going to happen, you want to know about that as soon as possible. So you're not scrambling on November 27th to try to figure out why your site or your client's site is completely broken. Any questions about that so far? Just the situation in general?
Who's responsible for updating PHP?
In general, it's an open source project, so there's a group of developers who contribute to it. They are I don't know what they're called, the PHP Collective. Does anybody know? It's open source, so they're
so an unknown group of people that anyone can join and we have no control over is responsible for
no, I think you have to apply. Yeah, this is in open source land. This is fairly common to have, especially like in WordPress itself. There's core developers who are part of a project and who are paid to maintain that project, and they usually have like a foundation or
Asmus
funding.
Lerdorf works. I just saw that link in the chat. He works for Etsy. He doesn't work for PHP.
I've missed
But
my chat.
most
Sorry.
open source language creators have main jobs.
Yeah, many of them do.
So our main job is to use their thing, the thing that they make, but it's not their main job to actually maintain that thing.
Right. That's how I think almost all open source languages are.
But does that make sense? Like significantly more people whose job depends on their work, and it's not even, and they just kind of do it while they're.
Oh, that's the nature of open source.
Yep, this is an open source debate.
Our company is core contributors to a lot of languages. Yeah,
that makes sense to you. Like that sounds like a.
Well, you're in a WordPress meetup, so this is something that we've all accepted. This is.
I mean, if it's open source, yes. I mean, are there languages that aren't open source?
Java.
You just keep repeating the word open source, but I don't think you really understand what it means.
Okay, I am moving on.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so when we look at PHP, so the PHP people, the developers, have released this guide to what is their guide to migrating from PHP 7.4 to PHP 8.0. And it includes a list of what's going to break. this is probably helpful to somebody at some level, but when you look at this, it's pretty technical. It's things like the real and unset casts have been removed. The ability to define case and sensitive constants have been removed. This is, it's fairly technical. So this is the official migration guide. Not that useful to people like us who are basically site owners who are trying to just learn enough technical skills to operate our own business, operate our own sites. So what can we do to approach this in a way that's reasonable for non-developers? First off, we want to find out what version of PHP your site is currently using. You're probably not using PHP 8 right now, but it would be helpful to know what you are using. So this is my own personal website. On every WordPress website, at least the last few versions, you can find out what your PHP version is by going to Tools in the left admin menu, then Site Health, and then we're going to go to this Info tab here. And then we're going to go to Server. And is this big enough for you to see? I can make it bigger.
No, looks good.
So my PHP version on this site is 7.4.32, which is going to be very shortly going to be insecure. So this is a site that I need to take care of. So the best approach to upgrading to PHP 8, you have to kind of assume that when you upgrade, something's going to break. That's just a safe assumption to make. So you want to check your themes and plugins for PHP. You have two options. You can check your themes and plugins for PHP compatibility without doing any testing of the code. Just sort of look and see if they've all said that they're PHP 8 compatible. And then kind of cross your fingers and hope that the documentation isn't lying. This is a non-technical route. It takes a little time, maybe a couple hours, and you're going to have to look through the documentation for your theme and all your plugins. The other option, which is a more robust but more technical option, is to actually create a copy of your site, upgrade to PHP 8 on that copy, and then test it. And that's what I, as a developer, do. And that's what I'm going to be doing for my client sites. They're going to pay me to do that. But that's the way that I'm going to feel secure that I have done everything I can to prepare for this upgrade.
Well, actually, I think you should do both 1 and 2 in that order, because you're really not sure unless you test going through all of the different code paths, particularly the error and exceptional cases, that there isn't some stupid change in PHP 8, like the syntax changes that now break your site.
Yeah, I mean,
I thought it was
you're
open
right.
source. Doesn't that mean that everyone has input? So why would there be a stupid change?
Oh my God.
Or are you just equating open source with democratic?
We're not discussing open source right now. We're just going to go through this and then we can have a discussion about the value of open source afterwards, after we've gone through this subject matter. This is a WordPress meetup. WordPress is open source. We're going to assume that everyone here is accepted open source and is used to using open source code. On your WordPress site, you have themes and plugins developed by many different people, and each of them are responsible for their own testing and their own documentation of their compatibility with various versions of PHP. Reputable developers or developers who have a lot of free time will probably have been testing with PHP 8 for the last couple of years because it has been around for a couple of years. So you can find in the plugin's own documentation or the themes documentation whether those developers have in fact tested its code in PHP 8. So let me see, I'm just going to do this again from my own website. So here in plugins, we have this view details. And this will give you a link to the WordPress.org plugin page, the repository. And this is where we get all our free plugins. And so for each plugin on your site, you would pretty much look at this page. There's no standard, I shouldn't say there's not much standardization in how this is documented. So I would recommend just going through this page and look for a PHP version. PHP version over here, 5.6 or higher. I wouldn't trust that. What you want to do is look for a change log and see if the change log mentions PHP 8 explicitly. See here in 2.9.1, I just did a control F to find PHP 8 on the page. And here it looks like they're actually doing some PHP 8 development. So I feel pretty secure that this plugin is going to work okay in PHP 8 because the developers have been, it looks like it's been several versions since they first started testing in PHP 8. You can't really go off last updated date because the WordPress plugin repository, like I said, it's not vetted to that level where they're going to know, they're going to be able to certify in this section right here what PHP version is good. You could have a plugin that was updated last week that has never been tested in PHP 8. You could also have a plugin that's several years old. I have one on one of my sites. This guy. This plugin, it hasn't been tested hasn't been updated for 2 years. And it's perfectly fine in PHP 8 just because the code that they're using happens to be compatible. It's core functionality that hasn't changed in the last couple versions of PHP. It's still working totally fine. And it just depends from plugin to plugin on the type of functionality in the plugin, how the developer used syntax. You really are just going to need to look at each plugin and look at the documentation. And not all plugins are well documented either. I have one premium plugin that doesn't have documentation online. It works fine, but the developer just isn't the kind. It's run by a single developer, and he doesn't have like a giant wiki of documentation available. So I just emailed him and straight up asked if he tested with PHP 8. He said yes. So I believe him, and it didn't break when the site got updated. So he must have been right. If you can't find it in the documentation, you can't get an answer from the developer. That's a little shady if the developer's not going to answer you about the PHP version his plugin works with. You could also just try Googling, does so-and-so plugin work with PHP 8? Because if it's broken on somebody's site, a lot of people have, not a lot of people, but the people who have updated their sites to PHP 8 are generally tend to be at a higher technical level. They're more into, you know, PHP and backend functionality. So they, if they have a problem, they're going to be posting questions about it, and you'll be able to find it on Google, either in a place like Stack Overflow or in places like the plugins documentation or forums on WordPress.org. So check the plugins documentation, check the page on the WordPress plugin repository, and you can also check for just check Google and see if you can find any information. And I already said that about plugins being updated and being compatible. Where are we? Same thing with themes. Themes are also in the WordPress repository. Check your documentation, check the change log. Google, is the theme name compatible with PHP 8? Today I looked for, I have 2 sites that use the GeneratePress theme. And so I was Googling the GeneratePress changelog. GeneratePress changelog looks like, oh, where'd it go? The developer, who's very kind, says, here, check the changelog. And this is their changelog. It's just a bunch of headers. There's no, like I'm going to go through here and click each one of these and read each one of these pages. So this is a situation where Googling a little further is your friend. Just keep looking and see if you can find information about the theme. I've also Googled Astra. I have a bunch of sites built in Astra and found this page. This is Astra's changelog. It's a little more useful because the details are all on the same page. So this is one where you can do a Control F and just see if they mention PHP 8 anywhere. And yeah, they fixed a fatal error that happened with PHP 8. That means they're at least testing in PHP 8. Doesn't guarantee that your site will work, but it's probably not going to be Astra that breaks. If you have custom code, many of us do, some of us write our own custom code, some of us copy and paste it from helpful sites across the internet. The custom code in your child theme or in your functions.php is your own responsibility. This is something that you should probably test on a copy of your site before upgrading. Although chances are that in WordPress, if the PHP was simple enough that you're just doing WordPress calls, you're just using WordPress specific code that you copied from somewhere else, it's probably fine because, like I said, WordPress itself is already compatible with PHP 8. So if the code that you're using is specific to WordPress, it's WordPress hooks or filters, something like that, you're probably going to be fine. Any questions so far on anything other than the legitimacy of open source technology?
Just because you use that word doesn't mean you know what it means.
Sure, I am ignorant of open source technology.
Claire?
I don't know where you have the justification to claim that you know more about open source than I do.
Okay, we are going to kick
Claire,
you out.
I just wanted to say thank you for going through, not just, you know, just looking at the, I'm sorry, let me do my video here. Not just looking at the WordPress.org site when it just says, you know, your plugin is compatible with this version or higher, and taking that extra step, because I don't know, honestly, if I would have thought to take the extra step or just have comfort knowing, oh, they say it's okay with it being higher. So I would just assume that it was correct. So thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it doesn't have an upper limit to what it says. Like if it's specifically said in that section compatible with PHP 8, I would test it, but that just means that they have. Yeah, I don't trust that, and I would want to test myself to see it if things are compatible. I think.
So, yeah, because I would have just been like, okay, that's great, and I would have moved on. And I definitely need to take that second look. So thank you.
I think you want to check the details, definitely. Okay, let me pick myself back up here. So where are we? Sorry. Now I have Zoom windows out of control again. Okay.
Staging copy, where we are.
Thank you. Staging copy. Okay, so I'm using the word staging copy here. What I really mean is a copy. When we say staging copy, we are generally referring to a sort of situation, a host where you can copy your live site to the staging site, and then you can just make changes there and then immediately push that back to the live site. So you're talking about sites that are twinned almost. It doesn't necessarily need to be twinned with your live site. It just needs to be a copy of the live site, because when we do these updates, you're clicking the buttons on the back end. And if it works on a copy for site, you don't need to then push it somewhere with some sort of automatic migration. You just need to go and push those same buttons on your live site. So staging copy or clone. So there are two options here. Many web hosts, but not all, kind of depends on how much you're paying, will allow you to make a staging copy of your site in your web host dashboard. So I'm going to walk through a couple examples here. And we're all on different hosts. If anyone has a particular host that you would like to try to figure out, we can do that in the discussion after this presentation. Put it in the chat. But I'm going to show SiteGround and GoDaddy. So I am in GoDaddy. This is my account in GoDaddy. And I'm going to get to, this is a basic managed WordPress account. GoDaddy has 30 levels of service. I can't keep track. So this is basic managed WordPress. And in the settings tab, you don't get a staging site with basic managed WordPress. It says basically it's upgrade, pay as more. So what you could do is you could be like, I'm going to upgrade my site for 2 months until I get everything sorted. I'll pay $18 for 2 months, and then I'll go back down and try to get them to prorate me or refund me. That's an option. If you don't have a staging site, then what you might want to do is set up a local staging site on your own computer, and I'm going to go through that next. If you have a more expensive version of GoDaddy, I think if I go to my settings And oh, yeah, I always get lost in GoDaddy. Sorry. Account settings. Here we go. Delegate access. My client has given me access to his more expensive version of GoDaddy. And here, if I go down past all the stuff, GoDaddy's confusing, to managed WordPress, here's the site. And I go to settings. And here we can see that I have a staging site. I have some options to, I think I can delete it and reset it. I can sync it, meaning I can copy it back and forth. I don't need to worry about that right now. What I'm really testing are, again, the code base, the theme and the plugins. So it doesn't necessarily have to have all my latest content. There's probably very little you can do in your content or even in your CSS and HTML that is going to be affected by this PHP update. We're looking at the underlying backend theme and plugin code. So this is one that I've already changed. This has a simple pull down. You can see they have PHP 7.4. They don't even allow any earlier versions of PHP. So they basically have the 3 currently supported secure versions of PHP on their servers. And for me, this was a simple matter of just picking it out of the pull down. I can switch back to PHP. Actually, I don't want to do that. I'll leave it on that. And it takes a couple minutes to stop PHP and then restart the site again. And then you're free to just log in and look around. On SiteGround, let me get logged in. Again, this is a client site, so nobody look at the password. At SiteGround, you have to go to your websites. And Ken took us through some of this last month. We were in SiteGround a little bit, weren't we? Am I imagining that? Site tools. And then we want to be in WordPress, and there's the staging tab here. And you select the WordPress site on SiteGround. You can have several WordPress sites in your account. Select the WordPress site you want to copy, type in a name for it, and click create. If it shows you this screen, this WordPress site was sort of built on top of an old Joomla site. So there's some CRUD that's still on the server from like 10 years ago. Just don't check anything and click confirm, because anything that's pure WordPress will be copied over, and anything that's not pure WordPress you want to leave alone anyway. So that might take a couple of minutes to run. It shouldn't take too long. But oh, look, I have another staging site already set up. Oops. So I'm going to go to my earlier staging site. Here we go. Oh, shoot. Where's my sorry. I remember where it is. Sorry, I need to go down to devs for my PHP manager. And this is where you can set the PHP version for all your sites in SiteGround. So SiteGround kind of manages your PHP for you. They set the version, and they're going to update the version when they're ready to update the version. But you can manually change your PHP setting. Now, again, I don't want to do this on my live site. I want to do this on my staging site. So this is a staging site I made earlier today. And let me see if my new staging site, there's my new staging site that I made just now. See, it was created with PHP 7.4.32. That's the standard SiteGround PHP right now. But I'm going to set it to change my version manually, and then it will allow me to see all these new versions here. And again, 8.1 is a much bigger change than just going to 8.0. More things are likely to break. So I'm just going to go to 8.0 and confirm that. And that's that. Now I can go to the staging site back here in staging. That was just created, and click around and see what's going on. When you create a staging site, some web hosts do and some web hosts don't copy or certify or provision an SSL certificate for it. So if you create a new staging site on your web host, you may see the screen that your connection is not private. It's giving you an SSL warning. This is actually your browser giving you the warning. You know, and I know that it's perfectly safe because we just created this as a copy of the of your live site. So you can just proceed. It says, you know, it might be unsafe. It's probably not. Don't enter your credit card number in a staging site. Don't ask anybody else to, but if you're just clicking around, it's probably going to be fine. So this is my staging site. It's a copy of my live site. This is a site that, you know, design is by me. That's why it looks like that. I'm not a designer. Let me see where I am in my notes. So your staging site, like I said, it may not have an SSL certificate. You're going to see this not secure warning. Don't worry about that. We're not testing SSL in this situation. We're testing backend code. The login screen is going to be at the same place because you just copied this from a live site. Your login is going to be the same as the login on your live site because on when a web host makes a staging site, they copy everything, including the database and the media. So this is basically a clone of your live site right now with a different domain. So I can log in and if I remember my password and click around. Yeah, and it looks just like my live site. I'm actually going to switch to staging site 7, which is the one I created earlier today. Okay. Any questions about staging sites on your web host? Each web host is a little different. If you're hosted with someone like, if you're paying a little more, basically, if you're hosted with someone like Kinsta or WP Engine, they make a point of selling. One of their selling points is that it's very easy to create staging sites on their servers. So on sites like Flywheel, on hosts like Flywheel, Kinsta, and WP Engine, the staging site is right there in your dashboard. You don't even have to go hunting for it. It's totally common to set up a staging site, delete it, move everything around. It's part of their workflow that you're paying them for. It's on the cheaper sites that it's a little trickier. You got to dig around. You might have to open up a support chat or Google their documentation and see if you can figure out where to find the information. Paul, I'm going to ask you to chime in probably when we do this next part where we're setting up local, because Paul has a lot of experience with Duplicator. There's a number of tools that will help you create a clone of your website locally. I am not going to go through them all or even any of them, but there we can discuss that again after this presentation when we have time to go through various questions. Everyone's website has some different situations, so there's a lot of different things to go through. Okay, to make a staging site on your local computer, there were until August 2 very widely used apps that create local staging sites, Local by Flywheel and Desktop Server. Unfortunately, Desktop Server shut up business in August, and only people with active paid subscriptions are being supported, so I cannot recommend Desktop Server anymore. However, I can recommend Local WP. This was an indie company that created this cool local development tool that lets you run a website, a WordPress website, just right on your own computer. It's not connected to the internet. It links off, but nothing can link on. It's secure. You can mess with it and break things without affecting your live site at all. It's free. They got bought by Flywheel. Flywheel got bought by WP Engine. So WP Engine is currently supporting local, but I still use this every day. You can download it for free and install it like you would any other app. It comes from Mac, Windows, and Linux, and it looks like, come on, buddy, where are you? It's behind my other windows. Here we go. It looks like this. Let me get that out of the way. That's a little distracting. Okay. It looks like this. It gives you a simple interface to add a WordPress site. create a new site, click through. You don't need to mess with any of these settings if you don't feel like it. You create your own, you create a basic, this is just like installing WordPress the first time on a web host. You create your username, you create your password. Make sure your admin address is typed in, and it's going to take a few minutes and just set up a copy of WordPress, and then I will be able to have an empty, of course it wants admin access.
When you set up this local site, if you're going to be testing 8.0, would you start with the 7.4 like it defaulted to, or whatever your current server has, download everything, get it all set up, and then change it to 8? Or how would you?
I would do that. I guess I would do that just because I think that's going to be closer to what's happening on the live site. I don't know if it makes a difference, but to me that just seems more like I want to be sure. Like, okay, the thing is, if I start with 8.0 and I set up my local site and something is broken, I don't know if it's broken if it's broken because I set it up
Right.
wrong, or if it's broken because it's 8.0. So the first thing I want to do is make sure it's as close as possible to my live site. And I would do that by making sure I have the same site right here. That seems logical to me. Okay, so now I have this new site and it opens in a browser. It just looks like your basic empty WordPress page. And many of us have already seen this, but I'll just go through for the benefit of those who haven't. This is the admin login that I just created. Of course, did I hit caps lock? Okay. Thing is, it's totally empty. This is the framework for your WordPress site, and what you need to do, which is where Duplicator or many other types of plugins come in, is you need to get the makings of your site. You need to get everything that's in the WP content folder on your live site here. You need to get your database, you need to get your media, and you need to get the theme and plugin files. Theme and plugin files you can just install as you did on your live site if they're all readily available, if they're free, or if you've got the licenses, you can just go through and click them and set them up. Media you can download through the WordPress export. Everyone's chatting plugins that will do this for you. There are a ton. I think we probably each have our own favorites. I personally like WP Migrate, but it costs $200 for the licensed version.
So worth it.
So worth it if you are going to do this more than once every 2 years. So worth it if you have to do migrations and clones all the time. Duplicator is great. WP all-in-one WP migration is great. Oh, Backup Buddy will do it. And Ken last month in the September meetup demonstrated how to do it without a plugin. So I have a link in the slides that I'm going to post to Ken's video on YouTube where he walks through how to do a site migration of your media, database, and theme and plugin files just through the file manager in your web hosting dashboard. So SiteGround, anyone who uses cPanel, they have this file manager, and you can just migrate your site just by knowing what to look for, going in, zipping it up, and unzipping it on your own hard drive. So there's a few ways to handle that. That's really site migration and cloning is really kind of a topic for another day as its own giant subject matter. But if anyone needs help with that, leave a message in the WP Naperville Slack channel, and there's a bunch of us who can be able to help you with that. There's a lot of good tools, like Sally says. Oh, let me see. Where am I? Oh my gosh. Okay, so we've got a local site and we've copied everything into it. And then the point is we want to update our staging site, whether it's on our host or on our local. We want to update it to PHP 8. We want to see what happens. Does it break? Does it not break? So the thing about PHP is you kind of have to click through. Somebody mentioned earlier, you need to check the plugins individually, you kind of need to check all the functionality on your site. On this site, I have functionality. I know this is there because I tested it earlier today. The whole site looks fine, but this guy right here, this PDF button that's supposed to convert my page into a PDF, that's going to break. So you're looking through your site, you're clicking everything, testing all the functionality, testing each plugin's different specific thing that it does, and you're looking for errors like this. This is a PHP fatal error. We're going to try to identify these, and you want to make sure that all of these are resolved before your live site is updated to PHP 8. How do we resolve them? Wait, I'm going to question this thing. Dealing with errors. I've skipped ahead. The main thing with the errors is you have to identify what is causing them, where they're happening. This was actually a pretty easy one because it happened when I clicked the PDF button. So it must be the PDF generating plugin. That tells me what I need to know. Then my choices are, do I contact the plugin developer and see if they're planning on updating it so it's compatible with PHP 8? Do I look around for another plugin that does the same sort of thing? WordPress is a huge ecosystem. Sometimes you can find a plugin that does pretty much the same thing as your broken plugin. Sometimes it's free. Sometimes you have to pay $25, but maybe that's $25, $50 it's worth it. Probably the last thing, well, you could try fixing it yourself. There's going to be a lot of people Googling, and posting questions in forums about such and such doesn't work in PHP 8. So as we approach November 28th, there's going to be more and more information online about different fixes available for different things. And you could also try fixing it yourself. Oh, you could try hiring a developer. That's often people's last resort because you never know who you're going to get when you go on one of those sites where you're hiring freelancers. So when you're looking for errors, you want to make sure that you are getting WordPress to tell you as much as possible about the errors. And we do that in WordPress by enabling WP debug. This error message that I have here is actually a pretty detailed error message. We've probably all seen a fatal error in WordPress where it just shows the screen looks like this, but it just says fatal error and it doesn't give you any information. And then you get an email later that tells you where the error was. WP debug gives you this level of detail. So this tells me which plugin it is. WP debug outputs errors to logs into your screen, and it provides more detail than just the regular PHP errors, which allows you to pinpoint where the error is happening. The traditional way to turn on WP debug is in your WP config file, which if you are comfortable editing your WP config file, you can find, you see that old Joomla there, in the root directory of your site, which is usually public HTML or www, depending on what your server is. WP config, as Ken demonstrated last month. You can sometimes edit this right in the file manager with this. Here's a little pencil icon. Never do this on your live site without testing it on a staging site first. Editing files on a live site is a really bad idea. I'm barely even comfortable doing this. Here we can see WP debug is false. This is my live site, so I'm not going to save any of this. So you want to, instead of that line, delete that and paste in the lines I have here. And there's a link to a place where you can copy paste this in the slides that I'm going to post. Let me back out of this before I actually accidentally edit that. Go away. Don't save. Okay. If that's a little too technical for you, don't worry. Not everyone is comfortable editing crazy WordPress config files. There is a debugging plugin called WP Debugging. It's free. It's recommended by Kinsta in their How to Upgrade PHP 8, or maybe it was their How to Troubleshoot WordPress article. Kinsta always has excellent documentation about different things. So WP Debugging which I believe I have on this site. You can install it from the WordPress repository with your plugins add new button. When you activate it, it gives you a settings screen. Where are we? And it basically is going to insert that code for you. So you don't have to edit WP config yourself. You can just turn it on and off right here by activating and deactivating the plugin. So I want it to be like this, these default settings, WP debug to true. I want it to be outputting these things. And that gives me nice error messages as I click around my site. And I really should only have the one error message. And that'll help you pinpoint exactly what's going on your site if anything appears broken. Now, when you turn on WP debug, not only does it tell you what's broken, it tells you like if something is just a tiny bit wrong. So you might turn on WP debug and giant orange errors come up across your site. If they say notice, don't worry about that. That's just something where it's like, this might not be technically the very best PHP, but it doesn't actually break the site. And that is, it doesn't stop execution of any code. Just, it'll go away when you turn off the debugging notification. Don't worry about it. Warnings, maybe just make a note of them, see where they're happening. Warnings are things that are not broken yet, but will probably be broken in the next version of PHP. They're things that are on the way out as far as PHP is concerned. So when you upgrade to 8.1, those warnings may turn into errors. For now, they're just warnings. No one else can see them, and you can only see them because you have the debugging turned on. Parse and syntax errors are generally typos in code, things like missing. This is something you see if you write your own code or if you're copying pasting code into your child theme. You know, if you leave out a semicolon or you put a single quote in the wrong place, you're going to see a parse or syntax error, and that does stop execution on the site. But because it generally happens right when you're editing code, you're probably not going to run into that. What you do need to worry about are the fatal errors, and those are the ones that where you see the blank screen with a white box and something has broken your site. And then WordPress sends you an email later, usually, about what exactly it was. As they're saying what to do about errors, it kind of depends on what the error is and what your level of comfort is. If the error is in a plugin that you really don't care about, just remove the plugin and you're good. If the error is in a premium plugin, you have a pretty good case to email the people who you're paying the plugin for the plugin and ask them to fix it. If it's in a free plugin, you can try asking in the support. There's one, in fact, this PDF plugin that is broken, there's already in the WordPress plugin repository, somebody posted this plugin broke in PHP 8 and somebody else posted, I fixed it. You can download a fixed copy from my site. Here's the link. So there's already, because it's open source there's already some people kind of fixing things, pitching in. And if you have to fix it for your own site, you might as well share a copy of the free plugin for somebody else's site. So people are already starting to do that for PHP 8. Google and Stack Overflow are great resources for helping, usually for finding someone else who has the same problem and then seeing what helps them. And there's the Naperville Snack channel where sometimes we might be able to help. We can't fix everything, but there's enough of us who've tried enough different things on enough different sites that somebody may be familiar with the problem you're experiencing. And that is it. That's as far, that's all the information I have. I wish everyone good luck in their upgrades. Has anyone here, I know Stacy has a terrible tale of what happens when you try to upgrade to PHP 8. Has anybody else here upgraded a site yet?
I just started a new hosting service, like literally a couple weeks ago, and my site, and I just launched a subdomain for a client I'm building her site for. Both of us are already on 8.0. No problem. And I'm running Divi, so yep.
Yeah, I would hope that an enterprise level company like Divi would be, I'm sure they started
Oh, yeah.
developing in PHP 8 the minute it was released. And so,
yeah.
yeah, you would expect there to be a seamless transition there.
Mm-hmm. Though I
And-
do have one client I'm worried about because his site crashed because they weren't updating. They have an InMotion server, and it's their private server with InMotion hosting, and they weren't managing it at all. So it was still running like 5.0, whatever. And it crashed a few months ago. So like, well, you got to update that. And they weren't doing any backups. I'm like, you got to do backup.
It occurs to me that we should probably stop recording now if we're going to start naming
Oh,
names. So
yeah,
I'm gonna,
sorry.
just to anyone who's watching this video, the slides are going to be in the meetup announcement. I'm going to stop recording as soon as I find my, sorry, let me,
I can stop it, I think.
thanks.